So, good morning, everybody. I think we've rescued Mr. Hatzimakakis from the traffic jam. So he's here to open our first item. So I particularly want to welcome all our guests this morning who've come to join in our discussion about the whole issue of web accessibility in connection with this committee's review and amendment and approval of the proposal from the Commission on accessibility of public sector bodies' websites, which I know you have a particular interest in. I particularly want to thank our rapporteur, Yorga Hatzimakakis, and also for arranging a presentation, I think, to bring the legal text alive, which is something that I think is very valuable. Often we get legal texts that are very dry, and we don't necessarily have an illustration about the points that are being made. So I think we're going to have your presentation, and he will introduce our guests in a moment. Then we're going to open our discussion with members. Mr. Trzaskowski, Mr. Garces Ramon, Mr. Engstrom or Mrs. Ruder may be doing it. I'm certainly shadowing it for my group as well. So we have representatives from all the political groups here to be involved in the discussion, together with other members who I'm sure will also join in the debate. Yorga Hatzimakakis, I'll leave you to introduce the speakers, shall I? I have the names of our guests, but I think if you'd like to introduce them and introduce the presentation and the session this morning. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this opportunity to have a demonstration which will stay in our memory, I think, because I always said this piece of legislation might sound quite technical, but it's the piece of legislation I will tell to my grandchildren that I was the rapporteur of, because it's very important for, you might say, for a couple of people. I would say possibly for all of us one day, because all of us might have one day difficulties in accessing websites. Now, I think we are going into the subject later on. That's why I just would like to welcome some guests that can tell us and show us how difficult it is to bypass this first hurdle for somebody who has a disability, for somebody who needs information, and this first hurdle is the hurdle towards information. All the other hurdles, let's say if you want to catch a bus, there are a lot of hurdles. But the first hurdle is you have to know when the bus leaves or where you get your ticket and how you can pay it. This first hurdle is one of the biggest, and we are talking about this hurdle today. And I'm very glad to welcome two web accessibility experts from the Netherlands, from the Foundation of Bartholomew. It's, if you wish, one of the world centers of assessing this issue. It's Martijn Houtippen and Erik Velleman from the Netherlands to coordinate the presentation. And I'm also very glad to welcome Ioana Maria Gertsu. She leads a guide dog school in Greece and will give us a practical example, analyzing or showing us how difficult it is, first of all, to access a website that is not changed, and secondly, and I think they have chosen the example of my website, second, to show you how the changes, which changes have to be done in order to make it accessible for Mrs. Ioana Maria Gertsu today. And I'm also happy to welcome Rodolfo Catani. He's a board member of the European Disability Forum, to give us a short also introduction, but also some concluding remarks to the demonstration. Mr. Catani is working for many, many years on this issue, and I agree with him that we as a European Union are quite late in comparison to the world, in comparison to some member states. So I would like to give, if you allow, Chair, the floor now to Martijn Houtippen and Erik Velleman.
Fine. Good? Yes. So,
thank you very much.
Happy to give you the floor. And your slides will come up here and on our screen.
Okay. So I would like to present a short story about what is web accessibility, including some good practice examples or some practice examples. And the first thing about web accessibility is this one. It's not my own slide. I took it from a presentation that I saw a few months ago. And it shows that web accessibility is not just for people with disabilities. It is also for people who are temporarily disabled by maybe the weather, by the outside light, by ambient noise, because they just want to use one hand and the other is for steering their car, because they are busy with their eyes and they cannot look on the screen, or aging eyes, or they are in a public place and they don't want everybody to read their emails with them, or they're on a bumpy road. Then it's not, I mean, you can have a motor disability, but everybody has a motor disability if you have a bumpy road. So, and you're trying to look at a website on your tablet. So it is accessibility for everyone, regardless of disability. So this includes people with disabilities, but also people in restrictive situations, or people with temporary disabilities, or search engines. So if you want to be found on the web, for instance, you must know that the web is blind and partly deaf. So if you want your website to be a website that is found by everyone, you should make it accessible. And accessibility for people with disabilities is for 80 to 90% the same as being found on the web. So people with visual disabilities is 4.5% of the EU population under 65 is visually impaired. Every 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women is colorblind. They use assistive technology. And assistive technology does everything. So you don't have to make special websites or do anything special. If you're a developer of a website, you just use the specifications. Like if you're a painter, you just use the correct paint to paint your house, which is different paint if you're on the inside or on the outside. And the same is true for websites. There are specifications that you can use. If you're a content editor, you may need some training, because if you change the language, then for people who are blind, it would be nice if the site is read to them, that the voice changes. So if you have a Greek text and suddenly there is English, it would be great that the voice output of your computer suddenly doesn't speak the English in a Greek way, unless you like that, of course. It works on, you don't have to do anything special besides use the specifications to have it work on braille displays or screen readers, or to get enlargement, or to use different input devices like speech or touch. Then everything works as long as you, as a developer or as a content editor, do your job in the correct way. Then you have people with physical impairments. 6.5% of people in the EU has this. Their problems are keyboard accessibility, or it's not navigable with speech navigation. Or they have an absence of skip links. So you have to just imagine you have this menu. Some European sites, for instance, have this. A very long menu. And then if you use the tab button to go from item to item, you sometimes have to tap like 40 or 50 times to get to the content, the real story. And then if you make a selection, you have to do all these 40, 50 tabs again. So an easy way to circumvent that is to add a skip link, which is a sort of a short link at the top of the page. And before I forget to say, most EU sites have this, so there's no problem there. Then hearing impairment. 3.1% of the population has a hearing impairment under 65. Their problems are audio and video without captions or text. But it's not only their problem. As soon as you are on a trade fair and you want to show somebody a video, or you're in a noisy restaurant and you want to show somebody a video, or you're sitting somewhere in a bar and you want to listen to a news program, then you'll all know that you'll have to put the sound much louder, or you'll be waiting for captions. One thing with people with hearing impairment is that sign language is often their primary language. So the best way of making it accessible for this group would be to add sign language, which is, as we'll all understand, a bit more work than just adding text in captions. So not everything in accessibility is easy. Then cognitive disability. Well, for example, people with aphasia, dyslexia, autism, ADHD, and reading problems, which is a large group, have problems, can have experienced problems with the internet or with the web. That is mostly for that group. It is not just a technical question. So it's not just the developers. It is also the content editors who have to change the way they present their content. Okay, and then you have the seniors, the 65 plus, which is a large percentage, becoming a much larger percentage of our population. They don't have disabilities, as we all know, but they do have a bit of hearing loss, a bit of sight loss, and so making the web more accessible will also make it much more accessible for them. Well, the restrictive situations, I just discussed them earlier, like light and sun, or not having the latest plugins, or for instance using a iPad. For people who have an iPad, you'll notice that as soon as you get on some websites, then you need plugins that are not supported by the iPad. This goes for different sorts of tablets, so it's important to, if it is not supported, technology is not supported, to make some sort of a workaround. Different devices, I just discussed that. We have seen some websites that don't work on an iPhone. And as most of you maybe know, iPhones, iPads, Android phones, and the Windows Phone, they all have accessibility built in. It is not all as good as you would like, but for instance, a lot of blind people use the iPhone because it makes them possible to get everything in speech output. And you can surf websites, you can read your SMS, you can send and read SMSs, and everything, use everything on your phone. So there are a large number of websites in the EU. It is, I think the directive says it already. I think in total more than 1 million websites. E-government websites and public sector websites. So there is a lot of work to do. Only a small percentage of them currently is accessible. And in the as far as I know from the Netherlands, we're currently at about 10%. And it is only slowly increasing in the past few years. So it is a few percent per year. There are a few risks if you look at this market for web accessibility. Then one of the risks is harmonization. Harmonization of local measurement. We see a lot of different local measurements, methods to measure accessibility, and we see a risk of fragmentation there. And also for industry, there is a need for harmonization. Imagine you're a country that doesn't only work in the Netherlands or in Belgium, but in 20 countries. You'll be really glad with a guideline that is used everywhere and that is measured everywhere in the same way. Then conformance. For conformance... So let me pass on to this one. So a few examples. Just a simple example is this one. It is alt text. Maybe it's a very technical term, but it is a short description of what an image says. So the example here is YouTube. Then the alt text for YouTube is logo YouTube. So if this is read, this website is read to somebody who is blind, they will hear logo YouTube. This is an example that we found at Valtion Nuovo Vosto. I'm not so good. My Finnish is not so good. But it is the portal site of the Finnish government. Their logo is the only place that states what they are, what this website is about, and it is empty. So if this site is read to you, you have no idea where you are, except when you read the rest of the text. The fix would probably be done in 3 seconds. The fix is just to add the alt, and the alt is Valtion Nuovo Vosto or something. So it's not something that would cost you days of time. It is probably in the system they have, it is probably something you can repair in a few seconds. Then consistency. Okay. Consistency, if you look at websites it is good for people with cognitive disabilities, for instance, to have a consistent navigation. This is an example of one website where you see a menu at the left, and when you go to the next page, you see not just the menu at the left, but it is a different menu and a different menu at the top. Still, it is the same site. This is something that is in the guidelines. Consistency. The fix is probably a 5-minute thing. Then video without captions. We found a number of videos without captions. Captions is subtitling for the deaf and hard of hearing. This is one example on the Luxembourg website. And we think the fix, it is a 20-second video. We think the fix would be about 2 minutes of time to add captions to this video. And this is an example on the European Parliament website where it is done in the right way. So there is a video there, and the video has, as you may be able to see, it's very small, but it has captions. And you can even choose from, I think, like 20 different languages or more, and change the captions to any language you like. So this is the way it should be done. Well, another one is this example of the revenue website of Ireland, I think. And this website works with Flash. And as you know, the iPad has no Flash support. So if you look at this site with an iPad, there's no possibility to do anything with your taxes there. Which in my opinion is not a bad thing, but okay. So, and it's also not keyboard accessible in, for instance, Chrome and Mac OS X. So there's a lot of people who will have difficulties here. You don't have to be blind to not be able to do something with the taxes in Ireland in this case. Okay, so that's the short introduction.
Good. Thank you very much. So are you going to be master of ceremonies? I'm not quite sure what's coming next, actually. So it's a voyage of discovery.
Thank you very much. I think now we saw the technical requirements. You could see that there are guidelines. It's very simple to follow these guidelines. So it's not a magic thing that we are talking about. It's a simple technology. And now Mrs. Gerzu will show us how she would see a website, and by chance it's my website as an MEP that you can see here, and Mrs. Gerzu will drive us through what she can understand being on that website as a person that is blind, and she will drive us through. Έχετε το λόγο, κυρία Gerzu.
Morning. My name is Iona Maria Gerzu. I have found a guide dog school in Greece, which is Lara Guide Dogs for the Blind. But my ex-job was, I was an accessibility expert in the Foundation for Research and Technology, Hellas. So I am here to show you how a non-visual person like me is using a fully accessible website, and particularly the site of Mr. Yorgos Hatzimarkakis, who he chose to make it fully accessible for the disabled people. And so I'm here with my team, with the Lara Guide Dogs team, and we represent Greece. And we stand also for Mr. Ioannis Basdekis, a fighter of web accessibility, who also programmed with this site. So to begin, I would like to show you, to compare the two websites. And my screen reader is a bit primitive. I'm really sorry for that. But as I don't have a big budget, I download a freeware from the internet, and so I would like to show you the old website of Mr. Hatzimarkakis, which is not accessible for the people who are visually impaired. And I'm sorry, but my screen reader, and also one problem that we have is that screen readers are not compatible with many all the operational systems for a computer, and I just bought a laptop for Windows 7. So this is the old site of Mr. Giorgos Hatzimarkakis, and I tried to read it out, but actually I don't know where I am on the screen, and because the site is not programmed to be used with the assistance of a screen reader and without a mouse, actually. So I try to locate myself on the screen, but it's not very easy. So now my screen reader jumps from link to link, but actually I really don't know.
The volume up a bit.
Sorry?
Can you put the volume up a bit so people can hear the...
Yeah. Sorry, but this is a new laptop.
Okay.
I just bought this. So, can you do it?
Go on. No, I don't know where it is.
So you can...
See if it's...
So.
No, go on.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes. Now you're going to Max.
Okay.
So, yeah, I a bit when we're nervous, we lose the simple things. So this is a website which has not a sitemap for the disabled people, meaning that we cannot have shortcuts, particular shortcuts to go to, for example, the main page or the other contact of the website. And the information is so diffusive that a person with a visual impairment cannot really navigate on it. So the computer just reads diffusive information from the text, but I really don't know what I'm reading at this moment. So I will just compare with the new accessible version of this website. And so this is the new website, and here I am on the main screen, and I will just navigate on the screen, and my screen reader now speaks. Just a moment, I will have to I have a conflict because my computer is in Greek and the screen reader reads. Just a moment, I will have to. These are problems that we encounter in our everyday life. So, okay, I switched my screen reader in English so that I can read the website, but now it's conflicting with the Greek environment of Windows. So I'll try to change that. So that's in Greek. Okay. So this is the main page of Mr. Giorgos Hatzimarkakis' website. And so, just a minute.
Accessibility statement, Windows Internet Explorer, accessibility statement,
sorry, I will find it. So here I'm on the main page, and I will ask the website, I will press just a short key, and I will ask it to put me in the main accessibility settings. So,
Valid markup validation of HTTP. Cathetos www. Torgo Chatsimakakis official website. Lista metriasti here access. Accessibility statement.
so here I'm in the main accessibility menu, and so I pressed in order instead of navigating here and there with the website with the keyboard, because of course I cannot use a mouse. I just pressed the shortcut that the sitemap had already informed me that is possible to do, and I was transferred right away to the accessibility settings of this site, and here I am informed of the access keys and what I can press and be right away in the link that I want without having to look around with the keyboard and trying to scan all the information to find where I am in the screen. So then I will go to the home page. And I will navigate. Now I just press the shortcut to go to the home page directly, and I will navigate to the contact. Here it's reading me aloud what I can read in the website, the articles. Yeah. Technology is not very well in our side in this moment, but that's why I switched to guide dogs. The dog's more reliable. Just a minute, please. So now I try to navigate in the website and read what is it. So now it's saying to me that the links that I have, so I can go to the press and read articles that there are in the website. I try to access the main, the links of the press and see what there is in there. Okay. So I just, I'll try to show you, if I can, just another setting of the website, because I know that the time is not, but if you see, there is also a low vision settings, and somebody who has okay. So that's all for me. I try to do my best, but I believe that if you just encounter a no-visual person, you can learn many more things from this.
Thank you very much. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. So for me also it was a demonstration. For the first time I saw that now guided through it by a person that should use that, because I, of course, and most of us would have a different approach to this website. And you can see by that how difficult it is, in fact, to use it. And you can see maybe how long it takes and why we need urgently some simplification, some legislation, some harmonization in the European member states. So I thank Mrs. Gerzu to come here from Greece and to show us that. And this is something that affects 15% of the population in Europe. So you see, this first hurdle is very, very big. Thank you. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. I would now like to invite the next speaker, Rodolfo Catani, who is representative of the European Disability Forum. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished MEPs. You have seen the possibilities. You have seen the difficulties. I think you start understanding that the change is possible. We are in a time where there is a historical shift from material to non-material, global and mobile communication environment. Accessibility is important for education, employment, rehabilitation, social inclusion, cultural life, political life also, and services delivered by public bodies or administrations become more and more practical for most of the population, which will be probably in a few years' time. We have certainly the necessity to have a user-centered approach. And I think it is clear now, I don't think to have to take time to do it. We have now clear that something is wrong in the accessibility field. The Commission studies say that only 10%, less than 10% of the public websites are accessible. Much less than this percentage is for private websites. Two things, I would say. We have an economic perspective in this directive. And this is good because accessibility can be a driver. Accessibility can be a driver for SMEs, which are the most important producers of accessible websites. It is not expensive. It is an opportunity and not a difficulty. But let's not forget also that this is an issue of human rights. Because being excluded, because being put aside in society is unacceptable for so many people, not only persons with disabilities. We have already seen that there's a problem for aging people, a problem for less literate persons using internet. Well, I think that it is important, it is essential that we understand that the proposal is insufficient. It's too late. Well, this is not important. If time is necessary, time should be taken. But it's too few. And there are only 12 categories identified which date from 2001, more than 10 years ago. This must be changed. By 2015, we will have an enormous incrementation of the accessibility need, and time is now for the European institutions to make it a reality. Unfortunately, next year there will be complete change in the European institutions. We will have a new parliament, we will have a new commission, and we really would like to see this piece of legislation passed before the half next year, in June next year, when this legislature will be ended. We need to conclude an ambitious and effective legislative act in a consistent way with the long-awaited Accessibility Act, which is to come, the Horizontal Non-Discrimination Directive, which is sleeping somewhere, and we really hope that the need of 80 million persons with disabilities in the European Union will be considered and will be respected. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Grazie mille, Rodolfo. Thanks very much. I think that concludes the presentation. We will have a very impressive presentation by our colleague later on from the European Economic and Social Council, by the rapporteur, my colleague in the Council, who is it's Mr. Ask Löfbjerg Abildgaard, and he is himself visually impaired. He will come up with also in a very impressive presentation on his report, which is a very good basis also for us. And I wanted to conclude this presentation, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much indeed for arranging that. I mean, my suggestion is, in view of the time, and while we have our guests here, I think we should have Mr. Abildgaard's presentation now, if you agree, because I think we will have an opportunity for you and your shadows to discuss this later. It looks as if we may not necessarily have a time for a full exchange of views, but I think we should make the most of our guest speakers. Then if we have time, I'll invite the Commission to speak, though again they can come back to our previous meeting. But I think if you agree, Mr. Hatzimarkakis, that it would be a good idea to have the presentation from Mr. Abildgaard. So I'm not sure, where is he going to give the presentation from? Are you ready to give your presentation? If I invite you to do that now. And then I think we'll then just check on the time and then see, and you can just give some concluding remarks and a timetable, and then we'll continue the discussion then following on, because this has been a really valuable session. So, Mr. Abildgaard from the European Economic and Social Committee, I'm very pleased to give you the opportunity to speak to us.
Thank you very much. I will try to be brief, because I would also be curious to hear the exchanges of your committee. So thank you much for the invitation to be able to present the view of the European Economic and Social Committee, the voice of organized civil society in Europe, so employers, employees, and various interests in the civil society. So we are working on our opinion. What we have right now is a preliminary opinion, but there is, I would say, in the committee broad consensus about the points that I'm going to make today. And as I said, I will try to be brief, so I'll jump directly to, let's say, the substantial points. I have the privilege that some of the previous distinguished speakers have actually introduced the issue and given you some figures and demonstrated on a very practical level how web accessibility works and does not work in some cases. I can also say for my personal account that I use computers every day. I never use the mouse because it's impossible to do as a completely blind person. But I'm able to navigate websites perfectly fine if they are accessible. But apart from my personal experience, the views of the European Economic and Social Committee. We do agree with Mr. Catani that serious consideration should be given to the expansion of the scope of the directive to gradually cover all public body websites. And let me try to explain why. The ambition, and I think we more or less in this room all can agree, should be that accessibility should be an automatic part of the process of constructing or programming a website or updating web contents if you are a public body. Now, if we are to ensure that this is becoming an automatic link in the process of creating a website, it needs to be built into the software that the developers use. It needs to be built into the software that web editors use. So we need a sufficient amount of websites to have these, to be under the accessibility requirements. And this is why it is insufficient to just specify 12 types of websites that, by the way, come from an outdated list from 2001, as also Mr. Catani was touching upon. And if we are doing that, if we are expanding the scope, we will be able to create that critical mass that will make market operators in the web accessibility market able to actually operate across Europe according to the same standards. And we should not forget that the standards that we are talking about here, that are referred to in the proposal for directive, they are standards specified at international level. by the World Wide Web Consortium. They are called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0, and it's an international reference. So it also means that European companies that stick to these requirements, they will be able to actually deliver services across the global market. So that's about the scope. I think it's important to say that it's not automatic that just because some public body websites are under accessibility requirements, then others will be as well. We are seeing that in some member states where there are accessibility requirements for some websites, and it is not sort of spilling over on other websites. We need to have clear and consistent requirements across the public sector, because that will also facilitate the implementation. Right. So, just to come to the flanking measures that we are proposing, which will also sort of be the conclusion of my presentation. What we are proposing is to say that a part of the monitoring mechanism should be a facility for citizens to report about accessibility and inaccessibility of websites. I mean, a simple reporting mechanism whereby citizens can simply send an email with a link to the accessible or inaccessible website to the relevant public body, and in that way we will, in a very easy fashion, be able to actually collect information about the progress of the implementation of the directive, and member states can use this information in their reporting on the monitoring of the directive. So, I mean, simply use the experiences of users in sort of a crowdsourcing, which is on top of the agenda in many areas of our economy for the time being. Then we are proposing other flanking measures, for example, that member states should be under an obligation to actually provide training and awareness raising among relevant staff of public bodies who work on websites, who work on the update of websites, in order to facilitate the implementation of the directive, and that social partners should be fully involved in the development of these training and awareness raising programs. Then, finally, I would like also to underline that we have been discussing a lot technological developments and future technological developments and how these could be taken into account. And what we are, first of all, saying is that mobile versions of websites should also be explicitly covered by the directive to ensure that the directive is future-proof, so to speak. It is also taken account of in the international accessibility standards, so in practical terms, it's not a problem. Secondly, it should be taken into account that also many public bodies nowadays use applications for tablets and for smartphones in order to deliver their services and information to citizens. And in many ways, these applications, apps, are integrated with the functions of the public body websites. So to the extent legally possible, the provision of these applications to citizens should also be covered, to the extent that they are integrated with the functions of the public body websites. So to conclude, the European Economic and Social Committee supports the proposal of the Commission. It is high time, we think, but we are worried about the adequacy of the proposed means. We think the scope should be expanded, and we think that we need to really, with very clear means, force the current fragmentation that is in the internal market in this area. And we are proposing the flanking measures that I was just mentioning. So I think this is it for now. I would be more than happy to try to answer questions, and I look forward to continuous dialogue with the rapporteur. And thank you for the cooperation so far.
Thank you very much indeed for that clear explanation. Could I just ask you about your own timetable? When the has your report been adopted, or is it about to be adopted formally by the EESC?
Yes. 22nd of May.
22nd of May, okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we won't have time for a further discussion this morning, but we're happy to invite you back to the next exchange of views. And I'll just pass to Mr. Hatzimarkakis in a moment, because the committee now has to, we have quite a lot of votes to do this morning at 10 o'clock, and we only have a limited amount of committee time. But I think it's been extremely valuable to expose the issues with that. I'm going to just give the floor back to Mr. Hatzimarkakis, perhaps to decide, I mean, if do you want to make some closing remarks, given the time, about how you want to move forward. And I think possibly we could, do you want to have one word from the Commission now, or do you want to leave that for a future occasion? I mean, I'm happy either way.
Well, because the timetable says that we would be voting at 9:55, I think we should keep the Commission for later on, if Mr. Iacovidis is okay with that. And I would like to thank you, Chair, for giving us the opportunity after the vote to have an exchange of view, or to discuss among members. Nevertheless, I would like to thank my colleague as a rapporteur, Mr. Abildgaard, and you really could see that in a very concise manner he browsed through the most important aspects of this piece of legislation. I'm very happy that you also, in the Social Committee, Economic and Social Committee, support in general this idea, this proposal by the Commission. Nevertheless, there's a lot of work to do to make it a little bit more, to simplify it, to put it like that. And I'm very grateful that we work together. So your work is already a very, very important basis for us, or for this Parliament, also since you are affected. So you're more authentic as a rapporteur than anybody else. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your views with us. And Mr. Chairman, I would like then to give the role as a master of ceremony back to you, and maybe we have a vote now.
Okay, well,